Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Januranjaya Yashodanandana Braja Januranjaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladev Jaya Srivadra Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Srivadra, Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Nagara Hari Bol, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. जय जय श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय। जय जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय। जय गौर निताई की जय। जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय गुरु महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। So once again, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. I'm very I'm happy to be here today. Today is obviously this month. It's the holy month of Kartik. So it's my honor and privilege to be presenting today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. And I do pray at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, and all the Gurus of ISKCON, including all the assembled devotees today. Please accept my humble obeisances, so that and bless me so that I have the mercy to present whatever I have, and that it is aligned to scriptural injunctions. So with that, we will kick off as per norm by reading Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita, and I understand that we are reading from chapter 34. It is the Jet Age Pariv Acharya. Is that correct, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji. So
Okay. So we're starting from May 9th, 1971. The Sydney devotees. Yeah, okay. So the Sydney devotees weren't ready for Prabhupada. An early telegram had informed them that he was coming, but a later telegram had said, Prabhupada not coming now. A third telegram had come announcing that Bali Mardana, the Australian GBC secretary, was coming. When a fourth telegram had started only arriving and the date and flight number, the devotees had presumed this referred to Bali Mardana, not to Prabhupada. The devotees had taken a small garland and had gone to meet the plane. And when the doors to the customs area opened and Prabhupada himself walked out, they were flabbergasted. A white attache case in his left hand, a cane in his right, a lightweight chadar around his shoulders, Srila Prabhupada entered the airport. Reporters on hand to interview Bali Mardana came eagerly forward, one of them inquiring why Prabhupada had come to Australia. Replying softly, Prabhupada said, he traveled everywhere, just as a salesman travels everywhere. A salesman looks for customers wherever he can find them, and Prabhupada was traveling, searching for anyone intelligent enough to accept his message. There is no difference in coming to Australia, he said. The governments have made a demarcation. This is Australia, but we see everywhere as the land of Krishna. One of the devotees hurried to the phone. One of the devotees hurried to phone the temple. Prabhupada was coming. Like Prabhupada's original temple at 26th Avenue, 2nd Avenue in New York, the Sydney temple was a one-room storefront on a main business thoroughfare. On the store's front plate glass window, one of the devotees had painted a picture of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada entered the room and found it bare, except for a simple wooden altar with 3-inch Jagannath deities and a big cloth-covered Vyasasan. An old rug hid the floor. The blue haze hanging in the air was smoke from the downstairs kitchen, where a devotee was frantically burning cumin seeds to spice Prabhupada's lunch. Prabhupada remained grave as he walked deliberately to the rear door and looked outside. But when he saw garbage and boards stacked high against the building, his gravity turned to sternness. What is all this? He asked. Someone tried an explanation. Unsatisfactory. A devotee brought a glass of milk. Too hot, Prabhupada said, and the devotee walked away. I'll just read one more paragraph. Prabhupada sat on the large Vyasasan. He looked around the room at each face. None of the 15 or so devotees had ever seen him before, and only a handful had been initiated by mail. They were untrained. The carpet was dirty, he said. It should be replaced. And why were there no flowers on the altar? He had brought Radha and Krishna deities, but before the devotees could begin their worship, everything must be very clean. The devotees would have to become brahmanas before they could worship Radha and Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I do have a little presentation, so I'll share my screen. So just bear with me. And Oh. Prabhu, can I just confirm that everyone can see my screen?
Yes, Mataji, all good.
Cool, thank you. So once again, Hare Krishna to everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances, and I pray at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and my Guru Maharaj, all the gurus of ISKCON, and to all the assembled devotees. Please bless me so that whatever I say today is aligned to scriptural injunction. So today we continue to read from Canto 5, Chapter 14, The Material World as a Forest of Enjoyment. And today we are discussing verse 15. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nashta Prayashu Bhadreshu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttam Shloke. Bhaktir Nashtake. Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna. Punya Sharvana Kirtana. Hridayantastु hi bhadrani vidunoti suritsata. So today's verse reads as follows. Kvachedasadhya griham davavat priya artha viduram ashukodarkam shokagnina dayamano bhrisham nirvedam upagachati. क्वचिद् असाध्य गृहं दवाबवत् प्रिय आर्थ विदूरम् अशुकोदर्कं शोकाग्निना दयामानो भृशं निर्वेदम् उपगच्छति. Would anyone like to recite?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, I'm also trying.
Thank you.
Kochidasadya griham davavat priyartha viduram ashokodarkam shokagnina dayamano bhisham nirvedam upagacchati. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Mataji.
Kochid asadya griham davavат priyartha viduram ashuka darkam shokagina dahyamano bhrisham nirvedam upagacchati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Mataji. Anyone else? If not, would anyone like to read the synonyms?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, please go ahead.
Kochid, sometimes asadya, experiencing. Griham, the home life. Davavat, exactly like a blazing fire in the forest. Priyo Artho Viduram, without any beneficial object. Ashuka Udarkam, resulting only in more and more unhappiness. Shoka Agnina, by the fire of lamentation. Daiham being burnt. Bhrisham, very great. Nirvedam, disappointment. Upagachati, he obtains. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Anyone would like to read the translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am reading it.
Thank you.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada Vijay. In this world, family life is exactly like a blazing fire in the forest. There is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more and more implicated in unhappiness. In household life, there is nothing favorable for perpetual happiness. Being implicated in home life, the conditioned soul is burned by the fire of lamentation. Sometimes he condemns himself as being very unfortunate, and sometimes he claims that he suffers because he performed no pious activities in his previous life. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Then we have the purport. Would anyone like to read the purport? No.
Hare Krishna
Okay.
Mataji, then I will read it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mataji.
In the Guru Ashtaka, Srila Vishwanath Chakraborty Thakur has sung Samsara Dava Nalolidha Loka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganaktam. Our life in this material world is exactly like a blazing forest fire. No one goes to set fire to the forest, yet the fire takes place. Similarly, everyone wants to be happy in the material world, but the miserable conditions of material life simply increase. Sometimes a person caught in the blazing fire of material existence condemns himself, but due to his bodily conception, he cannot get out of the entanglement, and thus he suffers more and more. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So moving on, before we discuss the verse in detail and share reflections, I'll just recite the Manglacharan. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvaya Namah. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama, Hare Hare. So moving on, in relation to today's verse, I'll just read the translation again. In this world, family life is exactly like a blazing fire in the forest. There is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more and more implicated in unhappiness. In household life, there's nothing favorable for perpetual happiness. Being implicated in home life, the conditioned soul is burnt by the fire of lamentation. Sometimes he condemns himself as being very unfortunate, and sometimes he claims that he suffers because he performed no pious activities in his personal life. So, just going through this chapter, so whatever has been covered so far, and the chapter before, it's sort of natural to have some questions creep in our minds, such as, we may think, who is this chapter referring to? Does it apply to all conditioned souls or just to householders? And then when we think about it, there are two types of householders that we know about, right? There is the grastas, the ideal householder, and there is the gramedis. And so, we start thinking, do these chapters apply to both of them? And then we hear that our near and dear ones, especially wife and children, are being referred to as jackals and ferocious animals. Now, how do we understand this? And then there's the question of why is there so much repetition? It seems that from the chapter 13 and now 14, we continuously hear the same thing over and over again. So it's only natural that these questions would creep in. It has definitely happened to me. So in my introduction, I just wanted to cover what are some of the realizations that I've had as I've prepared for this class. And so in terms of the first question, who is this chapter for? We would have noticed, and I'm sure everyone listening in this forum, we've all been following these classes in the verses. In the last verse of the previous chapter, in verse 26, King Parikshit, he requests Sukdev Goswami to give direct meaning to the allegory. Now he says that, my dear Lord, you have nicely explained the position of the conditioned soul who is compared to a merchant in the forest, and that the senses of a person in bodily concept of life are just like rogues and thieves in the forest, and that one's wife and children are like jackals and other ferocious animals. He adds, and this is the important point, he adds that intelligent people will understand this, but this will not be understood by unintelligent people. Now, by this, we can understand that he means us, the people of Kali Yuga, will not be able to understand this concept very easily. So from this, we can understand that this applies to every one of us. And so we'll come back to this again, but for now, this sort of gives us an understanding of, who this chapter or the last few chapters refer to. Then this is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Verse 10, which states our condition that people of this age are subject to the four classic faults. And these are, we have a short lifespan, we are lazy or spiritually dull, and we have misguided intelligence, and we are unfortunate. Therefore, for the benefit of us, the most compassionate King Parikshit, he's asking, and in this way, we understand that, definitely these chapters and verses are for us. Now, we also see from the previous chapter and the verses studied so far that householder life is portrayed in a very blunt and sobering light. Actually, when we think about it, we can say that householder life is being condemned or looked down upon as being inferior even. So how do we understand this in the proper perspective? And this is important for us to understand because for most of us, family life is at the very core of our daily existence. We live alongside those we love. We share affection, responsibilities, and the daily rhythms of life. So, how do we understand this aspect is another question that definitely came in my mind. So two things were coming out quite clearly. One, householder life is being condemned, and the same theme keeps coming up. So I was thinking there are two ways to understand this. And looking at scriptures as the basis. The first is that Vedic knowledge, Shastra, is Sabda Praman. Right? It is perfect, it is complete, and it is not flawed in any way. And so therefore, if we look at that matter-of-factly, we have to accept it. The second thing is that Vedic knowledge is not subject to personal preference or selective acceptance. Why? Because this knowledge is coming to us through Guru Parampara, the disciplic succession. And therefore, it is not subject to personal preference or selective acceptance. To give an example, on the next slide, we see a verse that all of us accept. Now, this verse from Canto 1, Chapter 3, verse 28 says, Krishna stu Bhagwan Swam. Now, this verse declares that whilst there are many incarnations of the Lord, and it appears throughout time, Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. If we accept this verse, which each one of us do, which is why we are followers of Srila Prabhupada, and if we accept this verse, in the same way, we should also be accepting the truths revealed about material entanglements, even when they challenge our sentiments. So, speaking for myself here, we cannot accept parts of Shastra because it suits us and reject other parts because it is not subject to our personal preference or selective, we can't do selective acceptance. Okay, so if we say, okay, that is settled, understand that. But the other question that'll come up is that, why is it presented in an unpalatable way? After all, Grhastha ashram is a bona fide ashram. We have student life, householder life, retired life, and the renounced order of life. So why is it presented in such an unpalatable manner? So you see, the thing is that the mind is very, very tricky, and it can lead us to believe that maybe this is for Gramedis, right? So sometimes we can say, hang on a minute, this verse is speaking of Gramedis. Those who are attached to material household life, they are neglecting spiritual duties, not understanding higher purpose. This, by the way, is also known as the default setting in household life. So 99.9% of householders, the default setting is they are attached to material life, forgetting what the spiritual duties are. In contrast, the Grahastha ashram is the ideal spiritual household who live responsibly but remain detached and God-centered. So we can be tricked by the mind to think like this, but we must understand that in the verses, it does not say Brahmini's wives and children. It speaks of all conditioned souls. So why? Because in the material world, there is danger at every step. And this is also coming from the Shastra, that at every step there is danger. This is because we're dealing with Maya every day. In fact, every minute, every second, because we are conditioned souls. And therefore, even though we may be leading a ideal spiritual household, we might be part of a spiritual household that is following all the rules and regulation, we are still prone to fall down. An analogy that Srila Prabhupada often used was the coal mine analogy. So in that analogy, he says if you go to a coal mine, you must dress accordingly. You cannot wear a white cloth and expect it to remain clean. So in this analogy, he highlights the need for spiritual protection in a world full of material contamination. And he said it especially for householders navigating Kali Yuga. And he was speaking predominantly of the dangers of bad association and the need for spiritual protection through spiritual guidelines, meaning our spiritual practice needs to be really, really firm. You know, without being steady in Krishna conscious, there's every chance that we will get entangled in material world despite being in the movement. So not sure how many of you heard His Holiness Ved Vyas Maharaj's class a few weeks back. It was from one of the verses in chapter 13. And one of the key points that he spoke about, he mentioned that to get to the spiritual world, Goloka, we need, the prerequisite is to develop all the 26 qualities that Krishna speaks of in Bhagavad Gita, starting with humility and tolerance. So just to cultivate these two qualities is difficult. So what to speak of the rest? So why I'm highlighting this point is because just to remind myself that these verses really is meant for myself, who struggles every day. So these chapters apply to us because it serves as a caution, a gentle but firm reminder to tread carefully. It is reminding us that the material world is a coal mine, and despite leading a life of purity, we can still get entangled. Just to clarify, the extent of suffering, however, between the two types of households is different. For the Brahmidis, they get entangled more and more because their life is centered around sense gratification. Therefore, they keep coming back to suffer the consequences of a life devoid of spiritual knowledge. On the other hand, the ideal, the Grahastha ashram, being a bona fide ashram, allows a person to purify themselves in a regulated way in order to achieve the goal of life. So even if there is an accidental fall down, we can make through those falls because of having the guidance of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So the key point is that these verses and chapters equally apply to both. The only difference is the extent of one's suffering. So next up, so just to conclude the introduction, so from these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam and from reading through Srila Prabhupada's purports and listening to all the devotees' classes on these topics, I have come to understand, firstly, that even if the descriptions of family life seem very disheartening and severe, they are not meant to induce despair and rejection. It is there to serve as a caution, a gentle but firm reminder to tread carefully. And finally, just as we turn our exclusive devotion to Krishna, Upon understanding his supreme position, we must also approach family life with spiritual intelligence, recognizing its potential pitfalls while still honoring its place in our journey. Now, the scriptures do not ever say to abandon our loved ones. It's just telling us to remain vigilant, to remain detached, and to be purposeful in our relationship, always keeping the ultimate goal in view. Now, this is also aligned to Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita chapter 18 begins with Arjun wanting to know more about the purpose of renunciation, Tyaga, and the renounced order of life, sannyasa. So in verse 2, Krishna explains one is giving up all material activities, and the other is the giving up of the results of all activities, and that is Tyaga. And then Krishna in verse 5, he gives his opinion. And so he says, all this activity should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty or son of Pratha, and that is my final opinion. So Krishna's verdict is there's nothing wrong with household life, provided it is without attachment or expectation of result. For sadhakas, this, like myself, this is difficult and it is a struggle. Therefore, these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam need to be read again and again so that I don't lose that perspective. Now to address the last question, remember this slide? Why is there so much repetition? You know, the reason for this is that in this age, we have a very short attention span. Therefore, repeated hearing is necessary. Now, Vyasdev, it seemed, knew our predicament, not seemed, he knew our predicament well in advance. So he applied the logic that people of Kali don't need new content if we haven't grasped the basics. Now, this is very much aligned with what Srila Prabhupada often emphasized. Now, he often emphasized that we must read and hear the earlier cantos before we get to canto 10 so that we can understand Krishna's pastimes in the right perspective. Furthermore, even scientific studies as early as this year, 2025, show that our attention span is reducing fast due to the sheer volume of digital content. Now, if you look at the board, this is coming directly from the study itself. Studies show in 2000, the average attention span for a human being was 12 seconds. In 2025, it's reduced to 8.25 seconds. That's even less than the attention span, average attention span of a goldfish. So why is it shrinking so fast? The reason for that is the sheer volume of digital content. We simply can't cope being focused for too long. And so, you know, that's why we need to hear continuously. So coming back to today's verse, I'll just read the translation again. In this world, family life is exactly like a blazing fire in the forest. There is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more and more implicated in unhappiness. In household life, there's nothing favorable for perpetual happiness. Being implicated in home life, the conditioned soul is burned by the fire of lamentation. Sometimes he condemns himself as being unfortunate, and sometimes he claims that he suffers because he performed no pious activities in his previous life. There are 3 key points. The first is that family life is compared to a forest fire, and I know this has come before as well. Absence of real happiness in household life is another common theme that has been coming up. Instead, there's ongoing entanglements, and then it talks about the conditioned soul's struggle. So we look at each one separately, and the first one I've sort of given more priority over the other two because the other two have continuously appeared in the previous verses, but we'll cover each one of them. So in terms of the first key theme, home life as a forest fire, now this verse compares family life to a blazing fire in the forest. Now, if we just think about it, a blazing fire in the forest is a situation that is uncontrollable, dangerous, and it is all-consuming. Now, anyone who knows a little about forest fires will tell you that a forest fire spreads without anyone intending it. So it doesn't take much for a forest fire to start and to spread uncontrollably. Why? Because the pre-existing conditions in the forest is already conducive to a fire starting. So likewise, material entanglements in household life, they would intensify without a lot of deliberate effort. So how is this? How so? Now, in this age of Kali, we live in an age of quarrel. Quarrels will occur whether we like it or not. Now, one cannot quarrel with themselves. You need others for that. And family members are those people with whom we spend a lot of time. And when we are with family, that's when our guard drops. We can become we become who we really are. So, it is said in Bhagavad Gita, we have divine qualities and we have demonic qualities. Both exist in the same person. And so when we over a period of time, when you are with people that you are close with, your guard is dropped. You show them, your true self. And so it is a perfect place for disagreements and resentments to take place. And so if you think about it, generally everyone enters household life for happiness, not to suffer. But sooner or later, everyone realizes it isn't what they expected it to be. Thus, the analogy of a forest fire. So small disagreements, resentments, all build up over time, and before long, no one is happy. So without spiritual understanding, they can't see what the problem is. And the problem is obviously that they're looking for happiness in a place of suffering. So most householders, either they destroy themselves by breaking up, or they suffer in silence, playing the part of lies and deceit through the pages of social media. So that's becoming a very common norm now, that I can't live happily here, but I can show others I'm happy through social media. So over the weekend, I was preparing my slides for this class, and I didn't have to do much, but this came in my news feed, like without searching or anything. So it says, my wife has a chronic illness. I no longer fancy her, and I feel so guilty. So this is not an exaggeration. This is from the news. Just a day ago, people marry to share their lives, to help each other out. They take the vow for better or for worse. And so, the default setting of the world at large is that as soon as one's happiness is at stake, it's time to move on. So that's why Grashta Ashram is becoming, it's not the default setting, it's the 0.9%. So we need, and that's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized so much on preaching, because people don't know. And even before we came into the movement, we were also in the default setting. Everything was around me and mine, me and mine. And so it's very, very important to get this knowledge out there. So moving on to how to extinguish a forest fire. If you ask experts, or if you Google on how to extinguish a forest fire, both will tell you to extinguish a forest fire is a very complex and dangerous task, and it requires specialized strategies. It requires specialized strategies, equipment, and coordination. And in most cases, the fires are only truly put out when it rains. So, in other words, it's saying that in either case, divine intervention is needed. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada uses the first verse of Guru Ashtakam to explain this. So just reading that the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is the ocean of auspicious qualities. So, Guru, how to understand Guru's mercy. Guru plays a key part in our life. And again, repeated theme, but as we've heard in the introduction, repeated hearing is key. They're the reason why spiritual master is able to deliver us from the forest fire of material existence is because he has access to that mercy. That mercy is coming from Krishna via the spiritual master. Guru receives benediction from the ocean of mercy, Krishna, and being compassionate towards fallen souls, he gives it to us. He puts our hand in the hands of Krishna, and as we know, Krishna never lets go. Now, I'll share a secret that I heard in a lecture many months, almost a couple of years back, but I've always remembered this whenever we talk about pure devotees. It was from a lecture from Nitai Sevani Mataji, but I wouldn't know which one. But she was talking about there's a secret that she was sharing in terms of how can practicing sadhakas get Krishna's attention. And she was giving the example that, if you go to a temple in India, she was giving, I think, an online class to and the audience was from another country. And she said, you notice that when you go for your yatras, when you go to a temple in India, it is always very crowded, but you want to get Krishna's attention. If you call at the top of your voice to say, Krishna, I am here, Krishna may or may not look at you, and she was, making it lighthearted. She said, because it all depends on Krishna's mood. So she said, here's what you can try, and it will work every time. She said, in a very loud voice, take the name of Srila Prabhupada or take the name of your Guru Maharaj. And what will happen when you do that, when you take the name of a pure devotee, as soon as Krishna hears that name, you've got his attention. Right? And we all know, as Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion, that pure devotional service is very difficult to obtain. Krishna does not give it easily. Why? Because he becomes the order carrier. And so if you call a pure devotee's name, even if he doesn't want to look at you, he does not have a choice. So Guru is able to deliver us because he has direct contact with Krishna. He can make a reference that Krishna has to accept. So I thought that was a really good point in terms of, our reliance on Guru, and having to take this seriously, so that our only way out of this place is to serve and take the instructions of our spiritual master very seriously. Next up, our spiritual master reminds us of our real position, that we are eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. We are ignorant of our real position as spirit souls, servants of Krishna. Our spiritual master opens our eyes to the harsh reality of the material world. Guru shines the mirror of reality on the disciple's face, and he tells us that you are stuck in a wrong place. And, and just to reinforce, he removes the veil of Maya. So he reminds us of our position, then he removes the veil of Maya. Now we are sleeping in the lap of Maya, and Guru gently, sometimes not so gently, reminds us that this is a place of Maya, is not your home. The problem of this place is explained in this verse, and in the prior chapter as well. The place is compared to a forest fire. It's a place of suffering, and without the shelter of a bona fide guru, one will not see the ugly reality of this world. No one else will tell you this. Instead, the world will tell you the opposite, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? You need a better house, better pay, how to make this a better, comfortable place. And it's just like my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radha Govind Goswami Maharaj, he says, this place is a toilet. And what we are doing is that we're making the toilet home. He says, he was giving a little bit of humor. He says, to sell a home, there are two things that will sell a house very, very quickly. One is the kitchen and the other is the toilet. So what was he meaning? He was saying that for the common person is only interested in two things, consuming, right, bhoga, and the other one is tyaga. So eat and eliminate. So, the Guru will tell you as it is. This place is a toilet. It's a place of suffering. Don't make it home. Next up, Guru reminds us to go back home. So if this is not the place to be, he tells us, and go back to where you really belong. Srila Prabhupada, in his book, The Teachings of Queen Kunti, he explains in the purport that we ourselves have created the bread problem, right? Despite having so much bread to last a lifetime, we keep endeavoring, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. This is happening. We see it happening today. The first generations work day and night, and the second generation, all they do is, the rationale is that I'm creating a better life for them. But what does the second generation do? Waste what the first generation shed blood and tears for. So our situation would have been the same had it not been for Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters. A bona fide guru tells us straight up we are stuck in the wrong place, just like Gajendra was stuck in the jaws of the crocodile. Maya is like the crocodile, and sooner or later, if we are not careful, she will take us in her jaws. So Guru warns us of this and tells us to get out before it's too late. Now, moving on, how do we get out? So going back to the firefighters, if you ask them, how do you get out of a forest fire? They will provide the following solution, right? They'll tell us, call emergency services immediately. Do not attempt to fight it alone. Evacuate safely and know the rules. So, I was thinking that Srila Prabhupada's purpose to each verse is so perfect and so relatable. Now, this verse compares family life to a forest fire, intense, consuming, and difficult to escape. And the plan to escape is so relatable to the advice given by the professional firefighters. So let's see each one with a spiritual viewpoint. Calling emergency services immediately equates to taking shelter of a guru immediately. Now, a lot of people, if you talk to them, if you try and convince them to take the shelter of guru, they would say, not just yet, we will over time, not just yet. But this tells us we are in a forest fire. You wouldn't be calling 111 for a lost phone, but if your house is on fire, if it's something really dangerous, you would take action immediately. Now, we know that we cannot get out of the forest fire by ourselves because we are trapped. You need a SME, and that SME is Guru. Someone asked my Guru Maharaj, we know the philosophy, we know we've got to chant, we know the four regulative principles. Do we really need a Guru? And my Guru Maharaj says, yes, you do. The reason is that to untie yourself, you need someone who is not tied, right? Someone who is not bonded themselves, who's out of bondage. So you do need Guru. We might think we know everything, but we really don't. And the more we get in, the more you'll realize that you don't know. So the second thing is that do not attempt to fight it alone. So we need Guru, and not just Guru, we need Sadhu, and we need Sastra. Why do we need all three? Because Guru is not with you always, so we need the association of Sadhus, and these would be people who are, who is a sadhu is when they speak. And we all know when Bharat spoke, King Rahugana immediately knew he was worth listening to. He's the person that I need to associate with. So Guru is not always with you, so we need the association of devotees, and we need Shastras, because Shastras would tell us all our decisions should be based on what's written in Shastras. So someone was asking Guru Maharaj, what's first, Guru, Sadhu, or Shastra? Which out of the three is important, or which comes first? It's just like the chicken and egg question. And Maharaj said Shastra. The reason for Shastra being first is because Guru and Sadhu both speak Shastra. So Shastra is always there. We understand who is a bona fide Guru by referencing Shastra. So Shastra comes first, but we need all three, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastras, because we'll never be able to understand Shastras by ourselves. Evacuate safely, this equates to not abandoning family life and responsibility. It talks about staying in your ashram, but remain detached. Know you are playing a role. When the curtain falls, the show is over. You just go away. Don't come back to perform another role. And so, know the rules is the next one. And the rule calls for using Shastra as your North Star. In other words, it's your guiding principle for all decisions. It would be the scriptures. So I thought that was very relatable. Whatever the expert firefighters say is exactly the same solution given in the Shastras. And then we look at point number 2, and I'll go through these next 2 points very quickly because it has been discussed a lot previously as well, but it needs to be covered. So absence of true happiness, 2 points here. The first is that in Bhagavad Gita 8.15, Krishna tells us that this is a place of misery and it's temporary. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that our job is to finish our business here and go back to Krishna. And so this voice simply reinforces that there is not the least of happiness in such a life. Instead of bringing peace, household responsibilities bring attachments which often lead to deeper dissatisfaction and sorrow. We are constantly working to create better facilities for loved ones. And whilst we are doing, some endeavor is not bad, we just need to make sure that it does not have an adverse impact on our spiritual development. So, we should perform our duty, should be aligned to Vedic principles. And my Guru Maharaj again says that if you are shackled in family life, have some discrimination. You don't need to give up family life. Just perform your duty but remain detached. He says, act very lovingly towards your family. And His Holiness Devamrita Swami was exactly reiterating the same thing in his class a few weeks back. He said, act lovingly towards your family members, but just remember you're playing a role. Don't permanently become the part that you are playing in this life. Otherwise, you will be given an opportunity to play a part in the same theater in another life, in another role elsewhere. It will definitely, it won't be your same family. Sometimes we think that we'll come back to the same place and and there are stories that confirm that it doesn't happen that way. And then we look at the last point, which is the conditioned soul's struggle. So what is this conditioned soul's struggle? We're trying to find peace and happiness in this material world. In Bhagavad Gita 18.14, Krishna explains that in every endeavor, there are 5 factors that are at play: place, the performer, senses, endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. So when a person endeavors for something, if he gets it, he becomes happy, but other issues crop up and he finds himself always looking over his shoulder. Even if a person is materially rich, he will struggle with other things beyond his control, such as sickness, separation, disobedient children. And if all that is fine, then he worries about other things. Like, what if there's a Adidevik klesha? Like, what if there's natural disasters? What if the stock market crashes? Things that are beyond his control. So, it carries on and on and on. On the other hand, if he does not get it, he becomes sad and unhappy because he lacks the understanding that the ultimate outcome of any endeavor is in the hands of the Supreme. So not having this understanding, he, like this verse says, he regrets the choices he made, feels trapped, and he blames himself and others for suffering. And all this just leads to the never-ending cycle of birth and death. And so this continues till the conditioned soul come to the understanding via the mercy of Guru and Sadhus that he's looking for happiness in the wrong place. And then the conditioned soul has a chance to come to the realization that happiness actually lies elsewhere. And in this way, we come to the last slide and the conclusion, which is that the purpose and perfection of life lies in pleasing the Supreme Lord. How do we do this? We already know this. We must honor and serve Guru because this pleases Krishna a lot. We can improve our sadhana. We can read, and it is said that especially hearing from scriptures is highly recommended. And in our family life, we can lead by example. And as His Holiness Devamrita Swami mentioned in his class a few weeks back, he mentioned that in the month of Kartik, we can sharpen our sword by improving our sadhana and through repeated hearing of Krishna Katha. So I will stop here. Grantrat Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So thank you for listening, devotees. If anyone has any comments or questions, or if they'd like to add to whatever's been discussed, please do so.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandot Pranam.
I'm
Thank
done
you
with
very much.
Pranam.
Very nicely bringing out the points very clearly, very emphatically the important points, and also very logically placing it to us so that the content of the verse is now amply clear to all of us. And a few things to mention on that. You have told about initially there is while reading these verses, it appears to us that the house life, the family life has been condemned, obviously, the life. But you have very nicely analyzed that we have to be careful while dealing with this life. We should not reject it because ultimately it is a very important aspect of this four varnas or the four ashramas. And in fact, the grihastha life maintains all other lives. If you look it carefully, that point is very important because only the grihastha ashram maintains the other lives. Because other lives, they are dependent on the grihastha life. So grihastha life is very important in one sense. But at the same time, one has to know the purpose of it. And if we have a clear vision that what is our duty and what is not, what is to be done and what is not to be done, the pravriti and everything, if we know that. And so that way we can maintain our, we can perform our duties in the family life while remaining unattached to it. It is very important because the purpose of life is not to get attached because ultimately it is a dukkhalaya moshashvatam. But at the same time, we cannot shred our responsibility as a responsible members of the family. So we have to do that. And you have explained very nicely from different places. And also ultimately, not to forget. And to do that, we have to take shelter of a guru who can guide us and so that we can perform our activities properly and ultimately remain in association with the devotees who will be a constant protection for us while discharging our responsibilities. And while doing that, all this will be done by the instruction of the Guru, who has the proper knowledge from the Shastra and guide us. He gives instruction to us both individually and general. So general instruction we have to follow, but we need a special instruction. We have to approach the Guru. He gives us, so he knows what is our problem and he guides us. And if we do it, if we maintain such a life, in association with the devotees, with the instruction of a spiritual master, which is based from Shastra, we can perform our life, we can make our life perfect and go back to Godhead. Otherwise, if we remain attached, we'll remain in the cycle of birth and death repeatedly. So you have very clearly narrated all these points so nicely. Thank you from a very nice presentation. Thank you once again, Mataji, for your nice presentation.
Thank you for the nice summary, Prabhu. Is there anything else? Is there any questions in the chat? No.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for your beautiful lesson. And
thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanapram. Thank you so much for analyzing this verse from so many different angles and wonderful analogy and explanations. I really like the analogy about the firefighters, and so relevant, just amazing. To explain this verse so nicely. And just one of the things that you said in the firefighters had to, you cannot fight the fire alone. You have to be help. I mean, that's so relevant. You know, in the spiritual life, we need the association of devotees, Guru and Shastra to give us help. Such a wonderful energy. I really appreciate that, and thank you very much for this, Hare Krishna.
No worries, bro. I was blown away when I was preparing it, and I researched it in Google, and then I looked at Srila Prabhupada's purports, and I was like, it's so relatable. And so I was just blown away, and you know, that's really nice.
He says you need strategy, and you could evacuate, you know, as soon as possible. So many wonderful comparisons. I'm just amazing. Thank you.
No worries, Shisha.
Like a wonderful essay on this. Maybe share it on the Google. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay.
We still got time, devotees. Anybody else? Any reflection, comments to share? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you very much for a very nice class. I liked your beginning. You took the bull by the horns. So all the things that we've been keeping in our mind for the last several weeks. You know, why are family members compared to animals and all that, and why so much repetition? So I liked how you explained all that, and that this applies very much to us, not just to Graham. We call ourselves Grahasthas. We are also probably sometimes tending towards Grahamedi behavior. And so it's anytime we're so fallible. So it's very important that we take these instructions to heart and not, avoid them because they sound unpalatable. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody else? Seconds before we end? It doesn't seem to be much. Should end the class here. Thank you very much.
Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Her Grace Rangadevi Mataji ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Hare Bol.
All glories to assembled devotees. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to